we're going to do some introductions, and then we will review the job description. We'll go over a little bit of content, and then we hope to get to some next steps. And then after this call is over, if there are any questions, we will have a Q&A session. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Sheri Luecking. I'm with the Midwest PBIS Network, and I have my wing friend, Allie Hearn, who's maybe going to jump in. Allie, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. Allie Hearn with the Midwest PBIS Network. Thrilled to be here supporting my captain, Sheri, and looking forward to the call.
All right. Thanks, Allie. Okay, so we're going to talk about job descriptions today. And so this was one of the areas of focus that we paid attention to at the last year's Clinician Learning Forum. So one of the activities that we talked about at that Learning Forum was to have either yourself or your school staff or your administrators divide a sheet of paper into thirds, and in the first column, how would you describe your role? And then in the second column, how would the administrators describe your role? And then in the third column, how would the staff describe your role? So we want to just bring this back to your attention and wondering if any of you have done this activity. I think this is a powerful activity that can be done, again, with just clinicians to sort of think about how we look at our role, and then how administrators might look at our role, and then how all staff see us. But for us to look at that from different perspectives. I think this is something that schools could definitely use going forward if you haven't done that yet. So we know that clinicians, a lot falls to school social workers, school psychologists, and school counselors. We know that there are things that we do at Tier 1 and at Tier 2 and at Tier 3. And so we want to just think about those things. We want to prioritize where we need to spend our time. And really we want to move from seeing kids one student at a time to doing more systems work, and also to doing more work at Tier 3 for students that need more supports. So this is just a very comprehensive list of all the things that we end up being called to do. Earlier this morning we did a recording on the crisis that Allie led, and it seems like what happens in schools is that we do get caught into responding to crisis. We carry walkie-talkies, and we are the ones that are called to diffuse or take care of, or sometimes even give discipline to behavior problem situations. So our goal here in this job description section is to really think about what is our job description, what should our job description say, is the one that currently is in place reflective of what we actually do, and really looking at some of these things on this list and prioritizing where do we need to spend our time. So some of the things that we said last year at the Clinician Learning Forum was that we wear many hats, there are just too many roles, we wish we had more time and more hands, that there just aren't enough hours in the day, my role is growing and constantly changing. So there's a theme here that we're feeling a little overwhelmed and a little stressed and not sure where to spend our time the most efficiently and effectively. Some of the big ideas that we captured from the Clinician Learning Forum in April of 2018, the left column is the big ideas from what people were, seeing and thinking and feeling, and then the right column is what people need. So the big ideas are, is there even a job description? Clarify with teachers about what the social worker's role or the school psychologist's role should be. Give some feedback on description as we create those job descriptions. Making sure we align our job descriptions to our evaluation rubric. So some of those pieces are important in terms of big ideas. And then in terms of what we need, some people felt like they hadn't even seen a job description. They need support of their role. They need some feedback, some time for collaboration. They need a leader to back them when it looks like maybe they're not doing exactly what people expect us to be doing. there was an example from Springfield School District, a school where the social worker was making home visits and was connecting with the food pantry, and the staff were wondering where the social worker was. She wasn't in her office during the day, and in that situation, the principal was able to say, was able to have her back and say, these are the times she's going to be out of the building, these are the things she's doing. So really offering that transparency and clarity on what other things we do that, look like we're not where we're supposed to be. There's a sample section of a job description that, I keep moving my screen away, that we want to look at who do you report to, what are your performance responsibilities, and what do they include. And then from the last year's Clinician Learning Forum, we had a school that developed one that was based on the Danielson framework for teaching. And so we know that the primarily the things that school social workers fall under are the classroom environment, so that culture for learning, the classroom procedures, managing student behavior, et cetera. But job descriptions are based on all four of these, so where we're thinking about planning and preparation, classroom environment, instruction, and then other professional responsibilities. So the example from Mount Vernon High School, and this is really small, this is available, I'll show you a link in just a second, but really thinking about those domains and then plugging in the pieces that we do, that we actually do in our jobs, and under each of those domains. So this shows domain 1, planning and preparation, and then the school environment, and then the service delivery and resources and professional responsibilities. And so then they also broke it down into components by domain. So this is, again, one school's example of having taken this job description and really trying to line it up with the Danielson framework and then create a rubric that for evaluation that accompanies this. So here's the link to those job descriptions in the rubric. So in your school, we want you all to think about how many of the items on your job description are connected to multi-tier systems of support. What things do you do that are related to data? What things do you do that are related to systems? And what are some of the things that you do that are related to practices? So are you on the Tier 1 team, the leadership team? Are you on the Tier 2 team in terms of systems? Are you helping plan the activities around Tier 1 activities in the school? Are you helping design and develop social academic instructional groups on the Tier 2 systems team? What's your role with data? Do you spend time reviewing the check-in, check-out data and sharing that back with staff, helping decide which kids need which interventions? Are you the lead? Are you the one sole only person who does social skills instruction for all students, who does check-in, check-out for all students? Or are you the person that is helping coordinate and facilitate some of those other practices in terms of the Tier 3 supports like wraparound or FBA BIP? So really sort of taking a snapshot of what it is you do. We talk about doing a time study a lot of, in several different situations in this work to figure out what it is we're doing. Allie's done a good amount of work with time studies in her previous school districts, as have I, and we've also had whole districts look at what their clinicians are doing in terms of how many minutes are they spending in crisis, in doing interventions, in problem-solving team meetings, in staff professional development. So we really want to think about what that looks like, and then what needs to change. How can we be more efficient and effective with our time? And then I think one of the things where we maybe get stuck is there an interest in changing it? Sometimes we get comfortable with sort of the status quo and how things have been. And then what would be the benefit if we did decide to make some changes? And we know that this can't be just social workers getting together and saying, hey, here's our new job description, we're proposing this, let's do this. This takes some conversation with your fellow clinicians. It takes conversation with administration. It most likely takes conversation with districts. Many times their unions are involved as you have to develop those job descriptions and get union permission to make those changes. So some of the things we want to consider and next steps for clinicians as we partner with our administrators, and I've kind of talked about a few of these already, is do you have a copy of your job description? Does it actually align with the work you do or that you feel like you need to be doing? Based on the conversations we've had with these clinician learning forums and the clinician learning forum PLCs that these webinars are a start of, what do you feel like is the most valuable? I mean, as clinicians, we know what's happening in schools and we know the things that come into our day every day. So what are the priorities? And you know, I've done this with teams of social workers, clinicians, school psychologists, where you all over the room on the whiteboards you write down all the things that we do, and then you start to clump those together and you prioritize where we know we for sure have to spend time, and obviously things like IEPs and federal rules and regulations, state rules and regulations. We have to make sure that we're doing those things, and then we want to make sure that we're providing supports to all students, but to those some students and to those very few students that are at the top of the triangle. So how do we start to think about changing that? And then I think another important piece here on this next steps is, can you collaborate with other social workers, and you know, if you have outside agencies coming into your school to provide some supports and interventions for students, can you collaborate with your school psychologists, school counselors, and school social workers, and bring in administrators to really think about what our jobs are, how can we sort of work smarter, not harder, and share the workload here. So could you do that in your district, in your building? Are there community provider meetings that you're a part of that you can have those conversations? Or are there regional special education or ROE offered opportunities where clinicians get together and you can start to have these conversations? And then we really are encouraging people to advocate for revisions if needed. I don't think there's one perfect job description, but we would certainly like to see lots of examples of what those look like, and you know, so we could share those and people could, you know, use those as they move forward. And then finally, we want you all to be able to take this right away and get started. So once we get a bulk of job descriptions and people can share those, maybe start with comparing and analyzing your current job description with what you actually do. So here's what it says I'm supposed to do on paper, and here's what my day really looks like. And again, a time study or an idea of what my day looks like from the time I walk in the door until the time I leave after the end of the school day. What have I spent my time in? And you can, you know, kind of, there's some good surveys that we can suggest that you can use to look at that, or you can just create your own Excel spreadsheet to say, here's where my time has been spent. And then we want to encourage people to network with other social workers to see how things compare. Some of this can happen at the Clinician Learning Forum, but again, some of it can happen in your district, in your building, in your region, in your special education co-op or in your ROE. And then I think a third thing is really identify those key allies in leadership who understand what you do and who are willing to work with you on those changes as needed. So that administrator in the Springfield district that I talked about, he was a key ally to that social worker. He said, I've got your back, we're going to make this transparent, we're going to put it on a calendar, everybody can see that you're out this block of time because you're doing this. So that's kind of the summary of the job description section. And Allie, I want to toss it to you to see if you want to add any comments or anything that I missed or that you're thinking.
No, I think it was great, Sheri. My key point, I think these days is always that you can't stress enough the importance of the partnership between the clinicians and the administrators. for so many reasons. And so I think we all know that, but we've, I don't know, like taken it for granted or just not spent the time to do that partnership justice by having meetings and talking with each other and digging into some of this. So whether it's professional development that you're attacking together or whether it's figuring out about the job description, or this morning we talked about administrators helping give permission to clinicians to push back a little bit on things that may not actually be crisis-worthy with the response. So I just, harnessing that partnership and then leveraging it to build the capacity of the staff and do more in the building is just critical.
I agree. Thanks for bringing up that point. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up, and thank you so much for listening to the webinar.
Thanks.